Hello, and thank you for joining the Power of Care, Comfort, and Connection for Our Emotional Health, the kickoff to our family-focused learning communities, which will run through December. Our goal is to bring knowledge, skills, and resources to families across New York State to better understand youth mental health and to provide us all with the tools and strategies to promote wellness in our homes. Funding for these events comes from the Mother Cabrini Health Foundation. When we first received funding from the Mother Cabrini Health Foundation and we started planning these events, our goal was, of course, to be in person, to have these conversations about mental health, to provide the opportunity to build connections between members of our community as well as schools. Unfortunately, we find ourselves here on a virtual platform, as we all have been doing for the last couple months. But we're really excited today to be able to bring to you this presentation with Jen Marr, co-founder of Inspiring Comfort. And also Jill Bornstein will be joining us later for Q&A. She's also a co-founder. I think this was a really important topic for us to start with. I think given everything that we're experiencing right now, there's lots of conversations going on in our homes about the pandemic and the concerns that that brings, about remote learning and social distancing and the feelings of isolation that that brings, as well as concerns about racial injustice and what the next couple months are going to bring. So comfort is probably more important now than it ever has been. And so with this presentation today, we're really going to focus on human care and connections, something that sounds so basic, but sometimes in our busy days and with the challenges we face can really slip away. So it's really thrilling for us to be able to start our series of events with this topic. We will be recording this and it will be available to be viewed on our website. So please, we hope that you will share it with others. And we also will be providing some additional information about upcoming events. And one of those is a book study that we're really excited to announce. Jen will talk a little bit more about that later, but we'll be partnering with them on a book study coming up in December. So I just want to kind of navigate you a little bit to some of what's available to you. On the right, you'll see a few bars stacked above each other. That is information about audio, as well as a place where you can ask questions. And so at the end of this presentation, Jill Bornstein will be moderating a Q&A for us. So we invite you to drop your questions at any time in that box. In addition, a member of our tech team will be available to help you if you have any audio challenges and answer any other questions that you might have along the way. So the real reason you're here is to hear from Jen. So I am thrilled to introduce you to Jen Marr and to turn it over to her. Thank you, Jen, so much for helping connect us with this really important topic today.
Thank you so much. And as I get ready to share my screen, can you see that, Amy?
Yes, we can.
Is my screen up? Awesome. Yep. Okay, thank you. And thank you everybody for being here and taking time out of your busy day to hear about comfort, which we say is human care and connection. And I know your schedules are busy, so we are going to get going, and we are going to start with some numbers. And what I'd like you to do when I pop these numbers up is to think about what you think they stand for. Number 7, 7 days away until the next election. 17.3, yeah?
I think we're just seeing your first slide, and maybe not in presentation mode.
Okay, let's see.
Is it showing up for you in presentation mode?
It is showing up for me in presentation mode, yeah. But yet I see that it's paused.
If you want to hit escape and try that. You're still presenting.
Okay.
That we see.
Do you see it now? Do you see that come up?
It still looks like the notes page, like it's not in presentation mode for us.
All right, let's see.
There we go. That's it. We see the number 7.
Okay, there we are. Sorry about that. Gotta love technology. As I said, thank you for jumping on technology for a session on human care and connection as we all get stressed about our technology. So here we are with the number 7, which is 7 days away from the election, which is just more stress. All right, 17.3 million. What's that number? That is the number of US adults suffering from depression each year. 40 million, the number of adults suffering from anxiety. 15 million, the number of adults in the United States suffering from social anxiety. 67,367, the amount of people we lose each year to drug overdose. 48,344, the number of losses by suicide a year. And 16,214, the number of homicides per year. Now these numbers are all 2018 or before, so we can only imagine how those numbers are going to appear with 2020 statistics in it. And really what we want to talk about today is what role can we each play in hopefully reducing some of these really horrific trends. So about 8 years ago, I discovered something that profoundly changed the way I looked at how we care for each other and how the world is caring for each other. I spent 5 years with a comfort dog, spending every day caring for people that were hurting, that were broken, that really were struggling. Whether it was a woman going through a terrible divorce or being in the halls of Sandy Hook each week, I showed up with this beautiful dog and really just spent time with people, listening in coffee shops and in living rooms, on front porches, in schools, in community centers, in nursing homes and funeral homes. And you know, the thing is, thousands of hours with thousands of people. And what I found out, my discovery is, we're all just the same. We all need this skill that none of us knows how to give. And it became more and more apparent every day. And you know, I started asking myself this question, like, what do we need to do? Like, what more can we do? What next? Like, it just realizing that people needed it but didn't know how to give it put me on this quest and this journey to figure out how can we care for each other. And you know, that question led me each and every day. That question actually led to this picture. This picture is now a dear friend of mine. She was a 3rd grade teacher at Sandy Hook. And she's there with little Addie Comfort Dog, who I took into that school each week. And this picture was taken because I kept showing up. And here we are 7 months after the tragedy that she got married. And Addie was the little guest of honor. And there I was with a friend I didn't know 7 months earlier. That question also caused me to try and test programs with people that were hurting so desperately in need of connection. And so we just tested program after program until we found better ways for them to comfort others just as they had been comforting as a way forward for resilience. And then that question also led to the formation of Inspiring Comfort, which today is the company that has pioneered comfort as a skill, which is what we're talking about today. And it also has led to programming, and it led to my writing of the book Pause to Comfort, which was out last year. And you know, the thing about this is it was a journey that I'd never started to do this. I was just starting this journey to help people. But the thing about this journey is that in the process, I learned that I'm the one that really has had this amazingly more fulfilled, purposeful, meaningful life. Like I'm finding so much more joy and meaning in relationships when I can help people and then they come back and help me. So 8 years of learning and studying and researching and teaching, and I'll tell you, a lot of days needing comfort has really made me realize like this is something we can do. And I want all of you to be able to feel that sense of resiliency and more fulfillment by being able to reach out to others that are hurting. So we're going to start with a question. I want you all to take a minute and think about 3 favorite people in your life. Could be friends, could be family. Just think about, who are your 3 favorite people? Now, I'm going to venture a guess that those 3 favorite people might be somebody you want to hug, like is in this picture, right? They're people that really know you, they understand you, they listen to you, they see when you're hurting, you know, and they really, really care about you. And the thing is, today in our world, a lot of people don't feel that care. A lot of people are searching for people that they feel care for them. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go on a journey. We're going to figure out what we need to do to be able to help more people and to help ourselves. So I'm going to start with 3 things I've learned over these last 8 years, 3 things on my journey. And then I'm going to share 5 things that you can do on your journey to comfort. All right. So first thing I learned on this journey, you know, I started to notice when I was out in the field how many people were just always on their phones. And I'm going to share a series of slides here that is really going to kind of show changes in our behaviors and how our world is changing. And here we have a picture of a conference room. Now, I want you to think back to like even 15, 20 years ago. These people sitting around this conference table, they would have not been able to do what they're doing right now. They would have been talking to each other. They probably would have been having to make small talk until the meeting started. But right now, this is what's happening. Any downtime, we go into our phones and into our own little worlds. And additionally to that, 75% of the time that somebody's on a phone, they look at content for less than a minute. And they're changing their screens every 19 seconds. And this is kind of fundamentally changing the way our brains are wired and working, and everything is moving along at a much faster pace. Or take this one. Anybody with girls and boys in school can, you know, completely identify with this picture. These kids should be on that carnival ride in the background, but yet look at them. They're all on their phones, probably just took a picture together or took a selfie, and they're focused on getting that on their social media page. And so this study that was done shows, and I mean, I think it's common sense, we all know it, that these girls are focused on making themselves look good on social media. Whereas in the past, this would have been a time that they would have been connecting with each other and getting to know each other on a far deeper, more friendly level. Or how about this one? At our own family dinner table or at social events. You know, this study, and this was back in 2015, so imagine what this is today. But even in 2015, 89% of people thought it was totally fine to be on their phones at social events. And if you look at the kids here, they're not even being able to get their parents' attention. And I think this is, again, something that sometimes is common in our world today. And how is this changing our behaviors? And anyone with a child at home knows this statistic. 7 out of 10 of our young people prefer now to communicate digitally than face-to-face. And what happens when they're communicating digitally instead of face-to-face is you will see a child in a room like this. Anybody with a child at home has seen their child like this, I guarantee it. Because communicating digitally is not the same as face-to-face. And they will end up like this because they feel excluded, they don't feel like people know them. And so what's happening because of all of this is our human care skills, our ability to reach out to people when they're hurting, our ability to actually look for the behaviors of someone not feeling well is completely woefully underdeveloped. We're just not developing these because we're not face-to-face enough to do it. And so we're in this situation where people really just don't know what to do. And on top of that, we had COVID. You know, you all filled out a survey before today, and you were asked about stress and about how your kids felt connected to their school before COVID, after COVID, and then you were also asked about your children feeling connected to their friends before COVID and now after COVID. And there's a really interesting but sad truth to the answers that you gave to your children feeling connected to their friends. Prior to COVID, the average answer was that they felt connected 8 out of 10, which I thought was quite high, which I was really happy to hear. But what the average answer was after COVID was 4.5. It almost was cut in half just during COVID. And so we know that this is adding another burden and another isolation and more disconnection, not only for our kids, but for us adults as well. So what has 2020 done to our relationship with our technology? I think we can all relate to this picture. And I'm gonna ask Amy to launch a poll. We're gonna do a poll right now where go ahead and answer this question. What parts of your life have been negatively impacted in 2020? And you can check any of these that apply. I mean, we each could be dealing with health issues, definitely social and emotional well-being. How about political and racial intolerance? How about financial security? And how about if you belong to a faith-based community? How have these things, which are all integral to our life, how have they changed since everything that's gone on this year? And when we look at this guy in the computer, it just brings back to us exactly how our lives are right now. We feel disconnected. We feel that we're not seeing the people we want to. And it's so different than think back to our parents' generation or any time in life like we didn't used to have to deal with work and with our communication this way. And so when we get frustrated, it's easier to take things out on people when we're not face to face. And this is something that previous generations have never, ever had to deal with. Okay, Amy, if it's okay, why don't I'm gonna keep moving forward. And so what we wanna talk about now, oh, look at that. Okay, statistics are up. 79% have felt their social emotional well-being. I mean, look at these statistics. Wow. So everybody's seen this. Physical health, 75% impact. Social emotional well-being, 79% impacted. Political racial intolerance is at 57%. Financial security, a third of the people here have been hit by that. And the faith-based community, a third of the people feel negatively impacted as well. And that's just 2020. And so, okay, Amy, you can take that down. Thank you so much. And so basically now what we are dealing with is the fallout from that. And the one thing that we can understand is that everybody we know is dealing with something. Like we just saw in that statistic, all of these different things up on the screen are being dealt with people behind their screens right now during COVID or pre-COVID even as well. Let's not forget, we were quite a lonely generation before that even. And so, but what happens when we don't feel connected or when we don't feel supported when we're going through all these things? You know, the loneliness epidemic is on the rise as well. And I know that everybody on this call knows that. And when we think about loneliness, you know, lonely is not being by yourself. Lonely is feeling like you're not being cared for. And so what we really need to make sure right now is making sure people feel that they're seen and heard. You know, each of us have our core human needs that need to be met. We need to feel like we're understood. We need to feel like we're seen and we're heard. We need to feel like we have hope and that we're validated. And when we're not spending time with each other and really getting to know each other, these needs aren't being met. You know, we've all been in a room, a crowded room of people where we don't know anybody and we really don't have anybody to talk to. And that truly is the loneliest feeling in the world. And so again, when we think of the loneliness epidemic, when we think of what's going on in our world, let's remember that it really is about feeling cared for. So even in the middle of physical distancing, even in the middle of COVID and everything that's going on, we can care for people and we can reduce this loneliness epidemic. I want you to look at this iceberg. I love this picture of the iceberg. And, you know, I love thinking about an iceberg. And, you know, I want you to think back to that slide with the girls at the carnival, right? And the slide with the girls at the carnival, and they were taking pictures of themselves and they were probably editing them and they were probably making themselves with all these filters and looking beautiful, you know, and That's what they were going to post on social media. And so people that were looking at their pictures saw their best picture of themselves, but they were really only looking at the tip of that iceberg, right? We're living in a world right now where we can have hundreds or thousands of connections on social media, but yet not feel like anybody knows us at all. And this is what really feeds into that loneliness epidemic. There was a study out that questioned 20,000 adults, and 54% of them said they didn't have anybody that knew them. That's crazy, right? 54% did not know the bottom of that iceberg. And so that's really what we're going to study today. And that leads me to the second thing I have learned on my journey, and that is comfort. Now, out in the community, we're hearing a lot of, and actually in the field, I heard a lot of programs about kindness. I heard a lot of programs about compassion and empathy. And these are all really, really good programs. But sometimes they didn't result in connection. And let me explain. When there's a kindness program, sometimes it's focused on random acts, and which, in its own definition is random. There's not a connection there. Empathy is a beautiful trait that we all need to grow. We all have it. It all needs to really be nurtured in us. And Harvard does this great study, Making Caring Common, that concludes that there exists an empathy action gap, right? Empathy is an emotion. And sometimes we can feel like we want to do something, but we don't know what to do, so we don't act. Same with compassion. We want to do something, but what do we do? The beautiful thing that we've learned about comfort is that it's a skill. And it's something that if you go through the process that we're going to talk about in a little bit, if you reach out to someone, you cannot comfort without a connection. It's impossible. So as we teach this skill, a connection automatically comes with it. And if you are caring for someone and comforting, it's going to be a compassionate connection. And as you do that, empathy is going to be carried. And you know what? When you do that, sometimes it's really awkward, so you get courage. And you know what? A lot of times you need to listen better to what somebody might need, so your listening skills improve. You learn that you have to be intentional to comfort, so you become more intentional. And with all of that comes patience and hope and purpose and generosity. All these things in this heart get carried along with this skill. And so that's why this has been such an amazing journey so far, as we partner with organizations and work to share the beauty of this action. So there's a little science behind it, which is kind of cool. We work with Dr. David DeSteno out of, excuse me, Northeastern University. And Dr. DeSteno says this. He says, when our bodies endure long-term stress, which is what we're all doing right now, the wiring to offset this stress is found in human relationships and connection. And we need this connection to feel safe, to cope with stress, and to manage fear. And so what happens with our bodies when we're under stress, if you know a little bit about the body, which I'm learning, the hormone cortisol is pumped into our system when we are under stress. And the only hormone, or the hormone that offsets cortisol, is oxytocin. And oxytocin is the human relationship hormone. So Dr. Arthur Evans, who heads up the American Psychological Association, he did a town hall like during COVID this summer and was talking to parents and students and faculty and PTA about how to get through the stress of COVID. And he went through a few things, but by far the number one thing he said to get through COVID is social connectedness, because social connectedness helps us with our relationships and deepens our relationships. And it goes back to this oxytocin cortisol balance. As Dr. Kelly Gonigal from Stanford University, sums it up by saying, your stress response has a built-in mechanism for stress resilience, and that is human connection. And that's where oxytocin comes in. So, we really do need to be focused on connecting with others and ourselves for our own well-being. And this plays true as to why when we comfort somebody, we ourselves feel better. I'm going to tell you a story that kind of gives this an example. Excuse me. So back in 2013, I ran the Boston Marathon, and it was only 4 months after Sandy Hook tragedy had happened. And I was training for that race thinking it was going to be this great thing to, you know, give some resilience and looking forward after this terrible tragedy at Sandy Hook. And I had dedicated mile 26 to all my new friends there. Well, I'm not that fast of a runner. I was running for charity. And so I wasn't at the finish line yet when the bombs went off. And so having run 25.8 miles and stopped cold and left to go and find the way back to the hotel, I was running with my friend Amy, who's in the picture with me. Our bodies were under enormous stress. Having just run that race, not knowing if more bombs were going to go off. You know, we had to go about 4 more miles and 2 more hours until I found my family. And we were back in the hotel that night, and I got a text from my friend, and her name was Dot. And Dot texted me and she said, Jen, when you get home tomorrow, I'm going to meet you at your house and I'm going to stay for a couple days. And I'm like, Dot, that's fine. You don't need to do that. You don't need to take off work. I'm fine. Everybody here's fine. We're not injured. And you know, that's sometimes how we feel. If we feel like other people have it worse, we don't recognize what we're going through. And so Dot, being Dot, she's a PA. She's one of these people that just always knows what to do. Texted back and said, no, Jen, I'm going to be at your house tomorrow. I'll see you there. I'm going to help you out. So when I got home the next day, there was Dot. Now, Dot recognized what I needed. What I recognize now looking back is the enormous amount of oxytocin or cortisol that was being pumped in my body, because that next day I couldn't think straight. Like Dot was like, okay, I'm going to make your family dinner. I'm like, oh, it's a good idea. You know, I was moving slow. My mind was not sharp. That's what cortisol does. Cortisol is post-traumatic stress. But it's the oxytocin that offset it. It was Dot showing up. It was Dot being there for me. It was Dot being there saying, okay, Jen, let's do this. I'm going to get the girls here. I'm going to make you dinner. I'm going to do this. And it was over the course of those next couple days that got me through it, gave me that path forward and friendship. And then you know what happened is Dot started texting me every week. How you doing? We became much closer. And she helped me through a really rough situation. And I experienced what that cortisol is like. So that is just a small example of that response. So the third thing that I have learned on this journey is that people are good. People do want to do the right thing. But because our behaviors have changed so much, it's become so awkward for people that a lot of people they just don't know what to do. We're also living in a society where people are being far more respectful of each other. They're afraid they don't want to offend anyone. And so a lot of times this stops them from saying or doing anything. And so what we found though is we can teach through this. So Amy's going to launch our second poll, which is going to talk about, what do you find most awkward when you know someone that's going through a rough time? What do you think? Here are the choices. If you run into someone that's going through a hard time, is it not knowing what to say? Is it not knowing what to do? Is it afraid to say the wrong thing? Is it worrying that you're doing the wrong thing? Or is it avoiding the uncomfortable thing altogether? So take a minute and tell us, what is most awkward for you?
Okay, Jen,
All
we
right,
have.
I'm going to keep going.
Yep, I'm about to close it.
Okay, excellent. I'm interested to see what everybody said. Saying the wrong thing, number one. Yep, that's a big one. It's kind of what we said. Excellent, but look, there's a little bit of everything. The least one was avoiding an uncomfortable subject, so that's great. You guys all have a lot of courage here. And next would be not knowing what to say. and worrying that you're going to do the wrong thing. That is absolutely right up there with what we have traditionally found out on the field. Thank you, Amy. You can pop that down. The good news is caring for each other is something that we can learn. And when you learn it, it really does bring you a greater joy and fulfillment. And this is where the magic happens. So now we're going to get ready. And we are going to learn of the 5 things that you need to take along with you on your comfort journey. All right, first of all, just recognize that you've got a road ahead. And this is a journey, just like any other thing you want to change in your life. You're going to need some tools and strategies to go forward with it. And so that's what we're going to do. So first thing to do on your journey is recognize that every day when you walk out the door, you are going to be faced with 3 choices. All right, now, just like if you want to go on a diet or if you're going to do an exercise plan, there's certain things you're going to have to commit to. And that's what you have to do if you want to take this journey of caring and comforting people and really learning how to cultivate that connection. You have a choice every day to walk out and what commitment you're going to make. If you walk out at door number 1, which is the do nothing door, you're going to walk into a world where you really don't open your eyes to the people around you. You're so busy with your own life that you're really pretty much focused on taking care of things for yourself. And if you hear of somebody that's going through a hard time, you don't really know what to do, and so you're going to avoid it. So please don't go through door number 1. If you go through door number 2 on your journey, you're going to be the one and done door. All right, maybe you hear of a hurricane in Texas and you're going to donate to it. Maybe you hear of your uncle who's having ankle surgery and you send a card. Maybe you know of a friend who had a terrible breakup and you give her a call. But then you forget and you don't go any deeper. So door number 2 is the one and done door, where it's something nice, but it really doesn't bring long lasting, deeper connection with that person who really needs to know you care. So every day on your comfort journey, please go through door number 3. Door number 3 is the comfort door, where you are going to encounter some awkward days. And just like if you are learning a new diet or new exercise plan, it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes. But on this journey, every time you get through those awkward moments and learn your tools and strategies, it's going to feel better. You're going to feel more accomplished. You're going to gain deeper relationships. Your friendships are going to grow, and you are going to be comforted back when you need it. So that is the first thing you're going to take on your comfort journey. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your dog or a cat if you have it, and Amy's going to pop up a quick poll, and I'm going to ask everybody, do you have a dog or a cat or another pet? And why do we want you to bring your dog along? Well, as you recall, I started my journey with dogs, taking them to people that are hurting. And I had this amazing ability or opportunity to watch what dogs do. And the greatest thing about dogs is, look at this dog. He can't talk, right? Dogs can't talk. And sometimes we use our mouths way too much. They show up all the time. They know when you're hurting. They are never on their phones. How about this one? They don't care what fur color the other dogs are. They're genuine. They always see the best in you. And they are there for you no matter what. Amy, do we have the results of that? Did I see it? 34% have a dog. 45% do not have a pet. Okay, that's higher than the national average. So even if you don't have a pet, it's really great to watch examples of dogs and what they do, because they really are beautiful models. And especially when we're working with kids, it's a very, very intuitive way to understand that sometimes dogs can show us what we can do. We're both wired relationally. We both have the wiring to care for others. And so we do love to use dogs as an example. So then, what do we take on our journey to signify the process of comfort? All right, because when you are on this journey, you're going to have to remember the steps every day. Now, we teach a circle of comfort. And so a friendship bracelet is a circle. And a friendship bracelet also signifies two people that care about each other. So every day, I want you to put your friendship bracelet on and to think about the process. And the process is this: we first start by thinking of someone else, really opening our eyes to people in our lives that are hurting and struggling, and really identifying who we can help. The second step then is when we identify someone that we want to help, we really think about what they need to hear or what they need. It's real perspective taking. It forces us to put ourselves in their shoes and to come up with our own messaging or an expression of comfort that will help them. The third step of comfort is to create that action. And then the fourth is that connection piece. Remember when we were talking about comfort before, we talk about that required connection. And that is the fourth step of comfort. We have to deliver that comfort. After we've identified it and thought about it, now we have to deliver it. And that is where the magic happens. When we give that comfort and focus on that person hurting, that's when it starts to really bond. And that fifth step then is to reflect back and really think about, what did that do for me as well as that other person? And when this process is repeated over and over, our empathic system is naturally awakened. And I want to share a story about this. We were doing a program with a sixth grader that was enrolled in it. His name was Sam. If you have a copy of the book, his story is in the book. Sam was signed up for a program by his grandmother. Sam did not have a lot of friends in school. He went home and played video games, and he worked with an aide in school every day. Sam did not want to come to our program. So when Sam showed up, it was actually a study at the time, and there was a questionnaire that everybody needed to fill out. And Sam wanted nothing of it. He was rebellious, he was combative, and he yelled out like, "This is stupid. I don't care. I don't care if people are hurting." He was completely disrupting the process, and so we had to ask him to leave. I was talking to the teacher or the doctor who was overseeing this program, and she says, "Let's ask him back." I was like, "Okay, we'll try it again." Sam came back the next week, and when we were doing the program, we sit around in a circle in the beginning and kind of just go through some of our teachings and talk about things. And Sam didn't sit in the circle with his aide. He sat behind the circle with his arms crossed, and he really didn't want anything to do with the program, but he stayed, and he wasn't as combative and disruptive as he had been the first session. And then he started doing the required work. And what this program did is each week, these participants created a signature comfort plaque, which basically was a wooden plaque. They had to think of a message on the front, and they had to write a personal message on the back, and they had to deliver that plaque. Sam did that with the help of his aide, and he did that each week. By the fifth week, Sam was sitting in the circle with the kids. One of the things that we also do in the program is make sure within the group itself that they feel cared for, that they feel like they belong, that they feel safe and trusted. And so each week, Sam felt comfortable coming back. And each week, he made a comfort plaque and gave it to somebody. By the sixth week, he was answering questions. By the eighth week, let me set the stage. So we were talking about appreciation, an appreciation for people that did something in their lives, but not necessarily family. We had talked about family before. So we were probing for community or school kind of people that were helping these kids. And so, we asked, like, who helps them that may feel unappreciated? And, the usuals would raise their hand, like, my mom. We're like, no, not the mom today, somebody else, my sister. No, not your sister, somebody else, like somebody outside of your family. And it was Sam. Sam raised his hand and said, the janitor. The perfect answer, the perfect time, and it signified his whole coming around. And what had happened to Sam? Number one, he showed up in a group that cared for him, which he probably wasn't used to. Number two, he followed through on all of his assignments, and he had delivered to 7 people an expression of comfort. Now imagine a kid like Sam giving someone a plaque. It's the last thing you would expect from someone like Sam. And so most people probably were shocked. Some probably cried, gave him a hug. And he then felt that he was making a difference in someone's life. His empathic system was engaged, awakened, and it was more rewarding for him to go through that than to sit and be alone. And that is how the empathic system is engaged and awakened. And that is how a child can be changed and taught empathy when they don't have any in their heart. So the fourth thing you need to take on your journey is your whole self. All right, this is a little sneak peek in the book, if you get a copy of the book. And it kind of lays out everything that we need to do to comfort. We need all of us. We need our heart to start, because caring and comforting starts with the heart. And we need our ears to listen. We need our eyes to see. We need our feet to show up, our hands to write and give comfort, our brains to remember it. And so as we go through our training and our book study that we're going to do, we're going to go deeper into this because we each have skills in this area. And so please always bring all of you when you're going to care for somebody. And that is number 4. And number 5, we always need a good book for our journey, right? You need a book, you need to be able to journal, you need to be able to keep track of what you're doing right and wrong. And so always take a good book, and we happen to have a really good one, which is Pause to Comfort. This is a book I was so lucky to collaborate with Sky Quinn, who is from Time Magazine. As you could see with that woman laying in the grass, she's beautifully designed this book. It's comforting to read. It's as comforting to read as it is to learn it. And Amy will be telling you more about these book training sessions in the future. So please take a good book with you on this journey. And, you know, in the end, I just want you to think about this for a second. Think about the iceberg. Think about the way our world is changing. And what if some of these things we can do can actually reverse some of those trends? What if we can see everybody's full iceberg? What if by doing all of those things, we can be like Sam and feel so good about what we're doing that we want to keep doing it? What about if our lives are way more fulfilled, full of purpose and meaning because we're caring for others, but in the meantime, we're reversing all of those horrific trends? My friends, we can do that. And it all starts with caring and connection. It all starts with comfort. I want to invite you on this journey. We don't have to go alone. Comfort on, my friends. Thank you so much. So I'm going to be excited now to introduce Jill Bornstein, who's a co-founder of Inspiring Comfort, and we're going to open it up to questions.
Do we have you, Jill? There she is.
There she is.
I am here, and I think you can hear me now.
So just a reminder to anyone, on the right side of your screen, there are some boxes stacked up. One of them says questions. That's where you can put your questions for Jen or Jill.
I'm going to start out with a question for you, Jen, because I want to go back. Anyway, hi, I'm Jill. I want to go back to the poll because about the dog. It was or pets. It was really interesting because in all of our field work, we tend to get more hands up that people have pets. So Jen, I'm just wondering, could you talk a little bit more about how dogs model the skill of comfort? And if I don't have a pet, how can I observe them and learn from them and just take a few little tips away from them?
Yeah, absolutely. Jill's got 2 adorable dogs, by the way, little Otis that she carries with her. So we learn from our own dogs, but even if you don't have a dog, I mean, I think, you know, the most popular Facebook love button site is the Dodo, which is all sharing pictures and videos of dogs. And I think we all kind of love to watch them. And the thing about a dog is research shows that it has the brain of a 2 to 3-year-old human, right? And so a dog has this amazing ability to live life like we would if we were toddlers, that they have their sense of adventure. They've never lost their sense of trust. And one of those things that a dog owner will tell you is that no matter what they're going through, their dog is there next to them. And they are always just their companion. They show up when you get home. Amy, do you have a dog?
I do.
Yes, okay, I see you nodding your head a little bit. But all of a sudden you watch and you watch them exhibit all the things that you want to do. All right, they are so genuine. They would never do what those girls at the carnival were doing. They would never edit a picture. They would never even take a picture themselves. They're genuine. They care. They show up. They always believe the best in you. They put you first, no matter what. And they're just always there, right? Jill, what is your favorite thing about Otis, Jill's cute little dog?
Well, my favorite thing really, I mean, is that, to your point, is they know when you're hurting. They know when you need a hug, and they know when you need someone to snuggle up to you. And that's what we talk about, humans kind of emulating that. I mean, we can't hug each other right now, but we can use our eyes to observe and see that someone needs support, and we can even do it through the computer screen. And we need to follow up, just like our dogs would go over to a human and give them comfort. We can do that together when we see someone's hurting on the screen. It can be pretty evident when you're in a meeting, right? You can tell who in that room might be a little withdrawn or distracted. And that's an opportunity to follow up offline, privately, and just check in and how are you doing. So Jen, I actually have another question. The title of your book that you wrote with Sky is called Pause to Comfort. And for anyone who doesn't have a copy of the book, it's actually spelled P-A-W-S, to comfort. But we have a play on word because we actually talk about pausing to comfort and why that's so important. So Jen, can you talk about why pausing and looking around is such a critical element of comforting others?
Oh, I know. It's, if we think back to some of those pictures that we were looking at today, we're on our screens all the time, and life has gotten so fast and so busy that so many times we are not pausing. We're not just stopping, like, take a breath, look around, think about, what does Amy need today? What do my kids need today? Like, we can get so wrapped up in the pace of life right now and just living in moment by moment, screen by screen, demand by demand, that we forget life has changed so much. Like, it used to be slower. Like, remember we talked about in the conference room, Jill, like, and I know you lived this too. We used to sit around and like be bored with small talk. We're waiting for a meeting to start, right? So there was just natural times that we would always pause in the past and have that time to hear from each other. But life is too busy now. It's changed so much that we do have to slow down, take a breath, and pause. So pause like a dog paw, and pause like P-A-U-S-E, right?
Exactly. Which kind of leads into another question. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the 3 doors. And in our busy lives, door 2 is a place a lot of us go because we do have good hearts, but we don't. It's hard for us to think about that deeper relationship that door 3 takes you to. So, if I'm sitting here going, well, am I supposed to do that with everybody? Like, help me have some perspective around how many times am I going through door 3 versus door 2? Like what are you asking of me?
Yeah, good question. So door 3 is kind of, it's a lifestyle that is going to say, I am going to have my eyes open more and more to breaking through what's awkward to connect with people, right? What's happening, I think we talked a little bit about with door number 2, is sometimes the things that we're doing for caring for others can be more of our brain than our heart. So a lot of times when we go through door number 2, we are just donating money or things or doing a simple act of kindness. And the person that is struggling really feels not connected to. So the difference between door number 2 and door number 3 is door number 3 is a commitment to really stay in touch with the person that's going through a rough time. if that's a person that you want to stay connected with long term. You know, in the book on the last page, we show marbles. And this isn't something we talked about in the slide deck, but we love to teach that every person that we want to help is a jar in need of filling. And every time you help them, you put a marble in the jar. One marble is not going to fill that jar. And one marble is door number 2. So door number 3 is a continual little actions, and it doesn't have to be a lot. And as we dive into the book study, Amy, these are the kind of things we talk about. What do you like to do? What are you comfortable doing? Is it sending a text? Is it dropping off coffee? Is it just popping a note in the mail? Is it popping a little email? Just little touches, little by little, showing someone that you're there for them and you care. That's the difference. And sometimes, you know, like we were talking about before, we're so busy that we don't pause to remember. And it's so easy to forget those that are struggling, because so many of them don't like to share their struggles openly. So it just takes some pausing.
So Jen, can I ask your story about Dot? She definitely walked through door number 3, but it was a big step, but there was a lot she was doing for you initially. So what I think I hear you saying is that it can be a lot of little things. It doesn't have to be something big. Is that right?
100%. When you think about, you know, going into Sandy Hook, like I didn't even talk to most of those people for weeks. I really was just showing up with a dog. And it was that act of just continually showing up and just showing somebody that I cared. Or now that I've moved away from Connecticut and I'm in Virginia, I like to send texts frequently, right? That's after you go through the assessment, you kind of see what are your comfort zones. Like, do you like to text, or do you like to go for walks, or do you like to talk on the phone? And so depending on where your strengths are, that's what you should be doing, just to stay in touch with people and just to let them know that you're there, whether it's by little actions or by some big things like Dot did, but lots of little things to show people that you're thinking about them.
Thank you.
This is for both Amy and Jen. Wondering, I know both of you have watched Social Dilemma, and I'm just wondering, with the documentary, how you think the skill of comfort can change what they're talking about in that documentary.
Oh, I'll start, Amy, and you can add in. I think it goes with, and Jill, I'd like for you to answer the question too. You're asking all the questions. You should talk a little bit too. So I'll start, and then you can go. You know, what I took away from Social Dilemma, and if you haven't seen it, please watch it. It really goes to how it underscores how our brains are being rewired and how our social skills are becoming more and more underdeveloped. And so we have to count, you know, that at the end of it, it says we have to change, or if we continue down this path, it's not good. And the way we're going to change is by connecting with people and caring for them. And comfort is the skill that, when continuously practiced and done, that's how we learn the real iceberg of someone, when we can see their whole person, and that they're not just we're not just seeing the tip of the iceberg, which is what happens. What do you think, Jill?
Well, you know, for me personally, I just find just the awareness element, first off, opens your eyes. But then when you combine that with the skill of comfort and realizing that comforting is the element of you reaching out, looking for the people who need comfort and connection. And it just forces you to put down that technology, because you absolutely cannot comfort someone else. You absolutely cannot authentically connect with your phone in your hand. And if you're obsessing about the like button and responding on social media. So I think just having that basic understanding is going to change your actions going forward. And so, you know, to me, it's really about, we're in such an awareness phase right now of letting people know. I mean, we've been focusing on it for a long time, but I think so many people are kind of waking up to what technology is doing. And then the question becomes, well, now that I know that, what do I do? And what we say, what you need to do is go out there and use your human care skills and start cultivating connection, because that's how we're going to get people back to being wired back together.
And I like that idea of, I think it was your number 5, Jen, being present. I feel like we sort of need to be present with our whole self, and the rest will fall into line. But I think a little bit too is being comfortable with yourself. And I think that, we have to give ourselves comfort so that we can be present and not maybe hide behind some of those other things that might be helping us. But I think, there's another question where someone's going back to the poll that you provided about, why do you sometimes not respond? And the question is, what do you tell yourself when you're concerned about saying the wrong thing to someone who's in emotional pain? And I think sometimes we use those other tools because we're not comfortable or not sure how to respond. And it's something that we're familiar with and used to. So, but having said that, I'm wondering if you could answer that question. What do you tell yourself when you're concerned about saying the wrong thing to someone who's in emotional pain?
Yeah, well, I know Jill agrees with this. Sometimes think back to the dog, right? Sometimes the dog doesn't talk at all. And if you're struggling to come up with something to say, then think of what they would do. They would show up and maybe just drop something off. If it's awkward to be in a talking phase, could it just be a short little note first? And sometimes it's really important to just build up a little trust, putting a couple marbles in the marble jar, maybe, sending a card, dropping off coffee, popping a couple texts, and all of a sudden that person feels that you do care, and that trust is built up, and they'll open up more and more and more as the process goes on.
And, there's a great, and this has happened numerous times. I have college age kids, and, one of them's good friend had lost his father. And, I said to him, have you sent him a text yet? Have you reached out? And he goes, oh, no, I was waiting because, I thought like I shouldn't reach out and ask him how he is because he's going to be with family. And, at that time I said to him, no, you know what? I know it's awkward, but you reach out and you send them a text and you send them a note, or you pick up the phone and you let them know you're thinking of them. And if they're ready, they'll respond. They'll get back to you. And if they're not ready, then a week later, you send another follow-up text, because you have to give them their space. But usually they're ready to respond. They're waiting for someone to, reach out, especially in times of loss, right? And that's when you need comfort, when you're going through a difficult time. But most people are afraid to do that reach out. But if you take that action, you let that person know that you are there and available if they want to hear from you. But if you don't ever take that action, you can't give comfort.
That's great. Thank you, Jill. So it's about our time here. I want to thank you both for introducing this really important topic into our conversations. And I know that it's one that we're going to continue through some upcoming events that we have, but definitely, as Jen mentioned before, through our book clubs or book studies that we're really, really looking forward to beginning on December 2nd and going through December 10th. So an email will be coming out shortly, probably the beginning of next week, opening up that book study. We encourage people to sign up. We do, I think, need to say that it's not like this. It's not going to be Jen or Jill talking all the time. It's really about participating and kind of getting into conversations with one another in small groups, doing the assessments, really digging into this topic. And so we encourage people who feel like that's something that they want to do to definitely sign up. A book will be included. And really just want to say thank you both very, very much for not only being here with us today, but for all you do, because I know you've spent a considerable amount of time working with people in emotional pain and bringing comfort, particularly through your beautiful animals, but also through some great conversations and activities. And I think what you do is so very important. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much. Look forward to the book studies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody have a great night.
Thanks.